Hey guys, it's Friday, April 25th, and I hope you're having a spectacular day. Get ready for the weekend, even though bootstrapping your startup, you're probably going to be busting your ass the entire time. Today's interview, I'm speaking with Leighton Taylor, who many of you may know from Ecommerce Pulse, and his experiments in dropshipping and e-commerce. He has a lot of great insight and content for you guys in terms of his experiences. I really hope you guys love the show. Thanks. Hey guys, welcome to the Business and Bootstrapping podcast, where we believe in busting your ass and bootstrapping your startup to build the business and life of your dreams. I'm your host, Matt Ward, and if you enjoyed the show today, please check us out at businessandbootstrapping.com to get more great tips, tricks, and interviews with successful entrepreneurs. Thanks, and let's get started. Today I've got Leighton Taylor on the line. And for those of you that don't know, Leighton currently runs the highly popular podcast Ecommerce Pulse, where he helps take beginner and intermediate level e-commerce entrepreneurs through his experiences with dropshipping and building websites, and interviews high-level entrepreneurs in the area to really get some insight into that. Additionally, he has worked quite extensively with website design and has a lot of experience with freelancing and living abroad. So I just wanted to bring Leighton on the podcast to kind of try to take some of his experiences and share with you guys what he really knows and what he's great at. So thanks so much for coming on the show, Leighton.
Yeah, Matt. Hey, thanks so much for having me on the show.
So with this, currently I know that you are actually not in the States. Can you care to elaborate?
Sure. I was living in the States in South Carolina for about a year and a half, up until this past February. And I was doing some freelance web design and development and some other things in addition to my blogging and podcasting over at Ecommerce Pulse. And my wife's name is Ryan, we love to travel. And so we decided to kind of just pick up and move overseas or move out of the country. And we were thinking about Thailand, and we still might end up there eventually. But for now, we're actually in Cancun, and we've been here for about 2 months now, coming up 2.5 months. And so we're just working remotely from here and enjoying the beaches here and the lifestyle and the good food. And so, yeah, it's been a good experience so far.
That sounds pretty amazing, Leighton. I know a lot of our listeners, and myself as well, are pretty interested in the expat lifestyle. From listening through other podcasts like Tropical MBA and some other real quality programs, I learned quite recently about the benefits of going abroad, the cheaper cost of living, and something that I'm really considering doing once I actually graduate and get out of college finally.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I really wanted to kind of go into how your experience taking... Actually, let me step this back a little bit. So just to give people a little bit better background before we dig deeper into your experiences abroad. While you were in the States, I know you said you were a consultant or a freelancer. From what I can see, you've basically been working a great deal of web design and then tried to work your way a bit more out of the corporate career and into some more entrepreneurial endeavors. Could you elaborate?
Sure. So in 2010, Ryan and I went to China and we taught English there for 2 years. 2012, we came back, and the summer of 2012, I was planning to actually do my MBA, and I'd gotten accepted into a program in a good school in France. And my goal with that was to basically get a corporate job somewhere and kind of work in the kind of the corporate world for 5-10 years. And that was what I thought I wanted to do, but deep down I knew that I really wanted to have my own business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And the brief experience that I had working for somebody else, I had grown to realize that I really didn't like it, and I would much prefer to be out on my own and be responsible for my own income and my own schedule and all that. So as it was getting closer to the time for me to start my MBA, I was thinking a lot about the finances of it, how I was going to have to spend probably $50,000, $60,000 on this MBA and go into debt and take 2 years out of my life that I could be working and instead studying and spending money rather than making money. I just had this sick feeling in the gut of my stomach, just like, I really don't feel good about this. And especially when I thought about the fact that it wasn't really what I wanted to do, that really I just wanted to start my own business. So I viewed this corporate job that I was thinking about getting into as kind of a stepping stone to being an entrepreneur. But so after a lot of thinking and talking with my wife and talking with some of my friends, I basically realized that I should basically skip the stepping stone, not go into all this debt, not spend all this time studying and working in a job that I didn't really want, and instead just kind of strike out on my own to begin with. So I started looking for freelance jobs, and I used Odesk to set up a profile and put my portfolio on there and start applying to some jobs. And within a few months, I had to start with a pretty low hourly rate, some pretty low paying jobs, and work a lot of hours. But within a few months, I was able to raise my hourly rate and got some good relationships with some clients that were more long term. Kind of grown ever since then. So it's been really exciting. The income has continued to grow, and then it's the freedom and mobility has been amazing. We've been able to travel around the States a good bit, visiting family and friends whenever we want to. And right now we're living in Mexico, and we might be moving on somewhere after that. So far the freelancing has been great. And then I'm also looking into building out other aspects of my business that are less hourly or contract based and more product based, where I'm selling information products or e-commerce sites where I'm selling physical products and that sort of thing. So kind of a lot of different aspects of what I'm working on right now.
Wow, you just dropped a huge amount of information on us. Let me backpedal a little bit on that. So I know you were saying that you kind of had this inkling or this gut feeling that really the corporate life wasn't for you. You felt more that you wanted to get out there on your own, start your own business, and work along those lines. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea what motivated you towards this, or why you're really wired that way?
I don't know. I think it's partially just a personality thing. I think some people are more independent, more kind of just lone wolves wanting to be out on their own. And kind of when I first realized that was when I did an internship in college, and I worked for 4 or 5 months with a local company doing web design. And I love web design, but I didn't like being under the thumb of someone else who told me when to come in and what project I had to work on that day. And I don't know, it's just kind of this thing where, I don't know, I think some people just have kind of more of that desire to make their own choices in those areas. And I think everybody does to some extent. Everybody likes to have freedom. But to some people, I think it's more of a burning desire. And some people just really can't stand to be in that sort of structured environment.
I completely feel you. I feel the same way. I've had quite a few internships in the engineering field, and they've just killed me. I've hated going in and working for someone else, regardless of how much time and effort you put in. You're not really getting rewarded. You're just slaving out your time to get your boss a promotion or a new car. Mm-hmm. And what you were saying with the internship, that actually brought up another point that I wanted to ask you about. So in my research, I found that you worked at the Varsity door-to-door sales. I'm not really sure too much about this, but basically, what was your experience with cold calling and selling to homeowners, trying to make a living that way? What did that teach you? Yeah,
that was one of the best and worst experiences of my life that I look back on now. It was life-changing. And I'm curious, did you see that on my LinkedIn profile, or where'd you see that?
Yeah, I did a little scrubbing of the LinkedIn to try to find out the most I could.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, so I did this. I was after my freshman year of college. Well, during my freshman year of college, I met this guy who was recruiting for this internship, and he's continued to be one of my friends ever since then. He's gone on to be a very successful real estate agent. But anyway, back then, my freshman year of college, he was recruiting, and he was looking for really motivated, independent, kind of entrepreneurial students to be in this internship. And basically what it involved was a week of intense sales school where they brought in professional salesmen to train you. Actually, they were like professional sales consultants who did full-time consulting with big corporations. And they trained us. We probably spent about 70 to 80 hours that week in training. And it was basically morning till night every day. And then at the end of that week on Friday, they told us what our territory was going to be for the summer. Gave us basically a city that we were going to be in, a location, and said, okay, go find where you're going to stay for the summer, and you start work on Monday. So we drove out there on, Friday or Saturday, and I was in Johnson City, Tennessee, and I had a partner, and we basically spent a couple of days finding a place to stay, and then got settled, and on Monday started work. And for that summer, we worked 13 weeks, and we worked 80 hours a week. So I would leave in the morning about 7 a.m., get back at about 10 p.m., Monday to Saturday. And then Sunday was full of more training meetings with the sales team and talking with our team leaders and all that. So it was pretty much a 7-day-a-week job for those 13 weeks. It was incredibly intense. It was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, psychologically, mentally. Getting doors slammed in your face and having people say no to you over and over and over again. You know, you're having thousands of people throughout the summer tell you no, but you also get a good number of yeses, and I learned a lot about how to quickly establish rapport and trust with someone that I've never met before, how to find something in common. And, you know, you don't really think of door-to-door salesmen as being the greatest people in the world. And that was always kind of the way that my friends and family had kind of, you know, you just have that kind of bad taste in your mouth about someone knocking on your door and trying to sell you something. So, but when you're on the other end of it, you realize that it's, you know, I was a salesperson, but I'm also a real person, and I have feelings, and you know, it's incredibly hard to do that job, to go door to door. But I learned a lot and made a good bit of money. It was probably more than I could have made doing any other summer job at the time. You know, for a college kid, I made about $12,000 that summer, and that was the most I'd ever made in my life. So that was pretty good for that time, and learned so much. It was probably the best thing that I have ever done, and I look back on it with really fond memories.
Would you say that this experience really helps you to gain a greater perspective into how to interact with people in terms of selling, to connect and try to create a product that really would help people, just to get into the people's minds and how to best market to them?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a big part of what we learned at sales school, was how to sell to people. And a big part of that is establishing a need or defining the need with the person. And the way you do that is just by asking lots of questions and asking, you know, what's important to this person that you're trying to sell something to. What do they need? What are their pain points and desires? What do they wish were different about their lives? And then just once they're thinking about what they need and what their pain points are, all you have to do is introduce what you have that can meet that problem or meet that need. And then often they're very ready and willing to pull out their checkbook. So yeah, I would say that I learned a lot about sales and how to help someone realize that what you have is what they want or what they need. And for some people, it's not the right thing. You know, you're not trying to force a product down someone's throat that they don't need, but a lot of people do need what you have, and as long as you can communicate with them in a way that they realize it, then you're gonna have a customer.
It's crazy how this process essentially applies across the board when you're looking at business. It's like Eric Ries's concept of the lean startup, and plenty of other people have talked about it. I've been going through a similar experience with you in a completely unrelated field. I'm working currently on trying to build a physical therapy practice SaaS app. Mm-hmm. And through the course of over 500 cold calls, just trying to get a hold of practice owners, trying to speak with them, you get shut down. I'm at about 98% of the time. I've only been able to speak to 27 so far. But you really learn just by asking people, so what are some of the issues you have? What do you wish that you didn't have to do? And just working through these similar processes that work regardless of what you're trying to do is really the most efficient and effective way to create a product that solves a need or a pain for someone. It's just crazy how that works. So yeah. I think my next question for you would be something involving a bit more of education. I know you said you were considering going back to school for an MBA and ultimately decided not to commit the 2 years and the absurdly large amount of money. What was kind of going through your head in terms of your own personal thoughts and fears, and then also more specifically how it related to yourself and your family life. I know a lot of the entrepreneurs that are just getting started are actually mainly single guys. You have someone else you got to consider. So what really goes into your decision making process?
Well, at the time, as far as the MBA, I was pretty much viewing it as a piece of paper that would qualify me to, get an interview for a certain kind of job. And I know, and I think a lot of people would agree, that a lot of what you learn in school, whether it's undergrad or a graduate degree, you can learn through experience and through books and through mentoring, and probably often even better than you would learn it from a textbook. So I think I was viewing the MBA as valuable because of basically how other people viewed it, and that it might help me to get a better job starting off or to move up the corporate ladder more quickly. And so I viewed that, I guess, as a good investment because of the potential, I guess, higher income that I could make down the road. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I read a lot of articles about how the kind of the whole world economy is changing in regards to education, and how there are a lot of people who you can find online who basically say that an MBA is becoming worth less and less over the years, partially because everyone's getting them, or because a lot of people are getting them, partially because, things are changing, maybe the job market's changing, maybe people are realizing that it's just a piece of paper, and that, honestly, I think part of it is that technology and marketing is changing so quickly now with social media and online advertising, and just everything is changing so fast that by the time you do a 2-year degree, what you learn at the beginning is going to be out of date. And it's more about learning general concepts of how to connect with people, and almost more psychology, or it's about relationships more than certain marketing techniques. Not that I feel really qualified to comment on it too much, because I never actually got the MBA, so maybe I could be completely wrong on that.
I've got to agree with what I've heard from speaking to people. It seems more and more that the kind of the convention or the norm in society is that you need someone to be able to tell you that you're able to do something, rather than just rolling up your sleeves and just going out and doing it. And it's really a twofold approach. So there's the issue of, if you're looking to actually get a job with someone, they're going to say, I want you to have this degree or this amount of experience, even though it's pretty much completely meaningless and not experiential based. I'm not sure if that's a word. But also there's the other aspect of people feeling, okay, I've completed this. This is something that kind of qualifies me to do this. It reminds me of another podcast I was listening to, and I can't remember what it was, but the guy ran a fitness site, and it was a membership-based site. And he was basically giving out advice it's called Nerd Fitness. He was giving out advice, you've probably heard of it. Mm-hmm. And he's given out advice on fitness and health to people interested in getting in better shape. And one of the things he did to first launch the business, he felt the need, before he could even start to consult people online, to get basically a certificate or an education degree certifying him to be a personal trainer. He took that certificate and basically used that as his internal reasoning for why he was able to do this. Do you think anything in your experience has helped you to look at what you've done and be like, to say that to yourself that, okay, I can do this because I have this experience? What really was your motivating force or your determining factor once you were ready to start going out on your own and beginning to freelance with Odesk and other mediums?
I mean, I think it was a bit of a gradual incline, because I had done just a bit of freelancing here and there in college and during our 2 years in China. And so I knew I could do it, and I knew that I could, I had the skills that were needed and all that. I think the main thing, the main hurdle I expected was finding enough clients to make an income that I could live off of. And I think what happened was, when I first got onto Odesk and started applying to jobs, and I got the first 2 out of 4 jobs that I applied to, small one-time jobs, and some of which actually, as I started getting more jobs, a lot of them turned into more long-term jobs because the clients needed ongoing work. So I think it was just that I'd had a little bit of experience in the past, and then was able to gradually increase that. And then once I got on Odesk, it just kind of blew up. So at the time, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to freelance, and it just kind of happened. It just kind of grew naturally. But I think that's one thing that's important, is kind of what you were saying, is that an experience can give you a lot of confidence, even if it's just a little bit of experience. And I've heard a number of people that I listen to podcasts by who say that the first dollar you make online, or the first sale you make, the first time you sell something online, just kind of changes everything, because you realize you can do it. It's not some pie in the sky thing that you can't achieve. It's something that you can do. And if you can sell it to one person, you can sell it to 1,000. So I think it's really important to get those early wins. And even if it's something really small, make a little $5 ebook and sell it. And I think that can really boost your confidence in that you can make money online or have a business.
It's really that whole total mind shift from initially working in a corporate job where essentially you're a dog and you're fed your meals at the beginning and end of the day just by your owner, to all of a sudden you're able to reach into the bag and feed yourself. You're taking control of your life and your income, essentially.
Yeah, and it's something that you said a minute ago. You said something along the lines of having someone else kind of give you, I think you use different words, but basically the idea of giving you permission to be successful. And I think that was in regards to like the college degree, where some people view, or like I viewed the MBA as almost someone else giving me permission to be successful in the corporate world, where that piece of paper kind of gave me approval to get a good job. And you mentioned the Tropical MBA, I believe, it might have been before we started recording, but that's one of my favorite podcasts, and they talk about this a lot. And our conversation made me think of a recent episode, and I just pulled it up in my iTunes here, and it was episode 232 at the Tropical MBA, and the title was, "Is a College Degree Useful for Entrepreneurs?" And that's just it's a really fascinating discussion that I would encourage anybody to listen to on this topic.
Yeah, that was a great episode. I remember listening to that, and the opinions are going to be mixed, but the majority of people that actually advocate the college education seem to advocate it more for the internal growth and the experience that you get with struggles and hardships, not necessarily the technical book knowledge you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to kind of dive into one of your previous startups, Picnic Cards, where you were essentially working as a custom wedding invitation company. How did you get started with that?
It got started when I had a couple of friends who came to me and asked me to design their wedding invitations because they knew that I was a designer. So I designed a couple of them for my friends, and one for my sister who was getting married a year or two ago. And basically that kind of a light bulb went off, and I said, why don't I just make a bunch of different designs and put them online, and then I'll use sample wedding photos as kind of placeholders and placeholder text, and then people will send me their photos and text, and I'll just switch them out, plug in their photos and text, and print them and ship them to the customer. So, yeah, I set up a WordPress site selling, listing these. I think I was using WooCommerce, and it was definitely a learning experience. In the long run, it didn't end up panning out for a variety of reasons, but I learned a ton, and probably one of the most important things that I learned with it, if I could just sum it all up, we can dig into it more if you want, but just to give kind of one big lesson I learned was that don't take too long tweaking your website and trying to get everything perfect. I was trying to set up this complicated website that would, take the order and allow them to upload their photo automatically and email that to me, and it was just kind of a complicated process, and I was trying to set it all up and get it perfect. And I spent, maybe 6 months trying to get the website right before I really worried at all about trying to get more customers. Past those first few that were my friends. And that was a mistake, I think, because if I had been able to test it more quickly, listing those products on Etsy, for example, or some way that I could quickly get it online and test it, kind of a minimum viable product idea, then I would have been able to more quickly realize whether or not it could be successful.
Initially, when I was listening to you, it sounded as if you were saying that you kind of gamed the system in terms of faking the invitations to speed the process up, but then you kind of dug a little deeper and revealed that you were actually more working on building out the site. And I know this is something I struggle with, a lot of entrepreneurs struggle. You really the ideal strategy if you can sell something before you put it up for sale or before you create it, that's really the ideal strategy. But even if you're not able to, say, acquire customers before your product's ready, really just getting your product out there, as shitty as it is. There was a hackathon at Georgia Tech. I probably shouldn't drop the name, but it essentially F it, ship it. And the concept is get something out there as fast as you can and get it in the hands of the customers and the consumers, see how they play with it, how they use it, and then iterate based off of their feedback. There's really no purpose trying to make something perfect when customers are only going to want one feature and you're going to make the feature wrong. So if you get it out there in their hands, that's really the fastest way to do it. Mm-hmm. So with your wedding invitations, it's kind of funny. One of the things that got me into e-commerce and retail in the first place was a site called My Wife Quit Her Job. And I was reading that a good deal while I was working over in Germany, just learning more about the ins and outs of e-commerce, drop shipping versus creating your own product. And what it really brought up for me was, even though you launched something and you failed, that's the most important part. There's so many people out there that are just willing to view themselves, oh, I'd love to be an entrepreneur. I have this great idea for an app. I have this great idea for a blog or a business. But so few people actually go out there and do it. Once you take that first step and fail, I mean, it's a process of failures. You need to build upon each successive failure to eventually achieve something. Would you say that's helped you?
Oh, yeah, totally. And it's kind of funny. I saw a meme recently going around Facebook, and it was said something along the lines of 9 out of 10 small businesses fail, so start 10 small businesses. I think that's oversimplifying a little bit, but the general concept, I think, is valuable, because your first few ideas probably are going to fail. They're probably not going to be life-changing or world-changing ideas that are going to just make you a millionaire. But the learning through starting something and even having it fail is invaluable.
That brings up a really funny point. I can't remember the entrepreneur, but he was a very famous, I want to say a VC, and his concept or his view on life was that essentially you're not going to be successful until you hit your 10th business. So it's really funny that the Facebook crowd would essentially send out something that was so relevant. And I've really experienced this myself. I was on your site several weeks ago when you gave me a critique of remoterboater.com, my first dropshipping e-commerce site focusing on RC boats. That's already failed. I've already killed that project. Had another app project I was working on with a team that just fell through. And I think it's really just trying to learn. Even if you learn just one thing from a failure, then that's one. Thomas Edison, he had a quote that said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just learned 99,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. And it's kind of the same concept.
Right. Yeah. Looking back at some of my older business ideas, I'm just like, what was I thinking? Or not necessarily the business idea, but how I went about trying to start it or how to test the idea. It's just looking back, a lot of them seem kind of silly now in the approach that I took. And it's because, but I realized that's because I tried it and I failed and I learned a lot. So I think, it's important to just start something and try it out. And don't be afraid to fail. It's because you'll learn so much, and then that'll just let you start the next one, the next idea, the next business one step ahead already.
Exactly. The next concept that I wanted to dig into you with was China, and then your beginning of your travels and working as a freelancer. So can you go a little bit deeper into what motivated you to go to China? Why you enjoyed traveling so much, and what kind of your plans are?
I think I've kind of always had in the back of my mind since I was a kid that I would enjoy traveling, and I had even thought specifically of China. I'm not really even sure why, But right before my wife and I got married, we were talking about the possibility of going over to China and teaching English. And my wife has done a good bit of traveling. Her parents were missionaries, and so she lived in a lot of different places growing up. And I think both of us just really enjoy the idea of being in a different culture and being exposed to people with totally different backgrounds who you have very little in common with, at least on the surface. So I don't know. I think we just really enjoy that. I mean, we love trying new foods and learning new languages. We got to learn a little bit of Chinese, which was a lot of fun. And I think Ryan's got a knack for languages. She picked it up pretty fast. So I don't know. I think overall it was just a great experience. I mean, I would highly recommend that anybody try it out. For one thing, teaching English overseas, in China at least, is so easy. If you have a bachelor's degree in anything and you're a native English speaker, it's not hard at all to find a school that will hire you. And they'll pay for your plane ticket over there. They'll arrange your visa for you, and they'll usually provide you with housing or a housing allowance. And then the cost of living there is pretty low, and they pay a comfortable salary. So, I mean, it's a great way to travel the world and have some amazing experiences without really paying anything for it.
That sounds like a great way for people to start out with their journey and their expat lifestyle. I learned a pretty good deal from some of my Chinese friends about the experiences that you could have working abroad as an English tutor, and it definitely sounds pretty interesting.
I was just going to jump in and say that also it's a great way to bootstrap a business, because you can often get a job for 15 to 20 hours a week that pays you a full-time salary, and then you have a lot of time left over that you can work on a business.
That's pretty amazing, because then you're getting to experience a new culture. You're getting your ticket over there if you just want to stay and hop around to Asia, which is much cheaper. And you're also getting extra time. I know I've heard people talk about bartending ideas where they could bartend in the States part-time to bootstrap their business. But this sounds a lot more fulfilling than that. One of the questions I had for you, and one of the things that I've heard pretty repeatedly from entrepreneurs, is how traveling really affected their mindset, how going to new places, discovering the cultures and customs that others have, really helps them to innovate themselves personally in their businesses. What were some of the effects that living in China and more recently Mexico have had upon your career and endeavors?
So you're saying like being in a different country and being exposed to different culture kind of affects, how has that affected my entrepreneurial mindset?
Exactly, and some of the innovative ideas or concepts that you've taken from that. Just maybe an example or two.
You know, that's a great question. I'm trying to think of something here. I think in general,
if you can't think of that now, then I'm sure my audience could come and check out your podcast later and maybe hear a little bit more when you dig deeper into that.
Sure. I guess just one general thing is that people everywhere are in a lot of ways the same on the inside. A lot of their, our core desires. And yeah, I think I'd have to think about that question a little more, actually. The main thing I was going to say was that, people everywhere are pretty much the same in a lot of ways in our core desires and ambitions and goals. But I guess one thing to consider is that it's interesting to see how values and even sometimes morals vary a little bit from culture to culture. Just as maybe one little example, in our Chinese school, it was fairly normal for a student to want to invite a teacher out to a meal, and the student would often want to pay for the meal. And our colleagues who were from America and Canada and places in Europe, when we got there, they kind of encouraged us not to do that, because in a Chinese student's mind, by taking the teacher out to a meal, they would expect that to affect their relationship in such a way that it would even affect their grade. So, a valuable gift or taking this teacher out to a meal, building a friendship in their minds should affect whether or not they pass the class. And in their culture, that's acceptable. Whereas in much of Western culture, it would not be acceptable. And I guess I'm not really sure how that relates to business. So feel free to edit that out if you want. But just an interesting observation about how culture is different. I think that's all I've got really. So I'm not sure if that's really relevant.
Not a problem. Don't worry about it. We'll see how it fits in with the context.
Okay.
So what I really wanted to get into now was a bit more of your recent work. I know you've been working a good deal with consulting and design with WordPress and other site creation, specifically Shopify. And you're also now working on your own dropshipping site. So how did you really manage the balance between consulting and freelancing with launching your own products and business?
Well, I think I was kind of first pulled into the e-commerce world by my clients because about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I started working with a company that I was partnering with them basically where they would find clients and then I would help them manage the development and design of the project. And they started bringing in a lot of e-commerce clients and we were doing all of their sites in Shopify. So I basically just started learning a lot about how these e-commerce businesses were getting started and how they were run and, what kind of website they needed and learning different best practices for e-commerce websites and helping them build their sites and become more successful. So I guess that's how I really started learning about e-commerce and getting excited about it. And, that just led me to, I'm already an entrepreneur, so that just naturally led me to be kind of excited about starting my own e-commerce business. So I started doing a lot of research on what it would take to start like a dropshipping site. Started reading blogs like E-commerce Fuel with Andrew Guderi and Shopify blog and, a few others. So as far as how I've balanced those two, it's pretty much been the case that I've had to keep doing my freelancing because that's what pays the bills, freelancing and consulting. And then I view my own site that I'm working on, my own dropship site, as kind of a side project that I do in a lot of my spare time. And so I guess that's pretty much the only way I think of it as far as balance. So whenever I have downtime that my clients don't need me, I work on my own site. And I think it's done a lot to help me relate to my clients better because I have a better idea of what they're going through, starting their own business or, figuring out how to optimize for conversions or how to better market their sites. I can now do a better job consulting my clients on how to go out and get guest post articles and get backlinks and start building traffic because I've had those experiences with my own site. So in that sense, I think it's been good for not only for myself, but for my clients. So it's been a lot of fun and I've learned a lot.
Okay. So I think the natural question that comes off of that would be, what percentage of your time or how many hours of your week are you dedicating right now to maintaining your overhead and working on your consulting? And what portion of your time goes to working on Survival Knife Experts, which of course will be linked in the show notes?
Let's see. That's a good question. I think right now I'm spending probably about 25 to 30 hours a week doing client work, freelancing and consulting. And then Ryan is helping me market Survival Knife Experts. So she's actually helping me reach out to potential guest blog sites and arrange those opportunities. We have a VA who's writing for us. So our VA in the Philippines, her name is Abby. She writes about 2 or 3 articles a week. So she probably spends 5-6 hours a week working on that, on writing articles. And then Ryan will edit those articles and touch them up and get them ready for publication. So Ryan also does some of the social media for Survival Knife Experts. She does Facebook and Pinterest. So overall, she probably spends a good 3-4 hours a day at least working on Survival Knife Experts. So I guess in a week that would be 16 to 20 hours. And then I probably work a good 5 to 8 hours a week kind of optimizing the site, tweaking product descriptions, that sort of thing. So honestly, I would say probably overall we spend somewhere between 30 and 40 hours a week working on the site.
I know the site's coming along pretty well. You can clearly see your web design background with the nice themes and how the website looks aesthetically. One of the questions I really had, oh yeah, of course, it definitely looks better than my site. But one of the questions I had was involving your VA, your virtual assistant over in the Philippines. A, how did you find her? And then how much are you paying to get your articles written, and what kind of return are you seeing on that? How did you really know that you were ready to outsource some of the content creation?
Well, I found her on Odesk, and I just posted the job and what I was interested in and filtered through a bunch of applicants and had a few interview, and she's been great help so far and done a great job. We pay her about $8 an hour, and she does a lot of research for us, a lot of research into, the different knives that we're writing about, our products, and writing product descriptions, category descriptions, blog articles. And so a lot of that is just like doing research and finding out, what are some different ways to build a snare in the wilderness if you are, caught in a survival situation. So she'll go out and research different ways to do that and then compile those and kind of write a rough draft article. And then we'll be able to edit that and make sure it all looks good and go up for publication. So as far as return on investment, I'd say we are steadily improving our search engine rankings for different keywords that we're going for. So we haven't seen a huge bump in like sales or revenue or anything since we started doing that, but we have seen, I take that back. We have seen a small increase in organic search results. We've been doing less paid advertising, so our sales have dropped off a little bit from that, but then our sales have increased a little bit from the organic. So yeah, overall, I would say it's been successful. By doing this guest posting, we're building backlinks and improving our search engine rankings.
That's a much better mix to be getting SEO-based traffic over paid clicks, because in drop shipping, your margins are going to kind of suck. That's just kind of how it works. Yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, if you think about it, we're actually paying for it either way, because I'm paying her to write articles versus paying for advertising. But hopefully the SEO results will be a little more long lasting than the pay-per-click.
Yes, that's a pretty great point. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, with your experience as a freelancer, can you try to help our audience basically understand the dynamics of Odesk? What's the best strategy if someone's looking to get some content created or edited to go about hiring a consultant or freelancer on Odesk to make sure they don't get ripped off?
I think that partially depends on whether you're looking for a one-time job or more of an ongoing relationship with someone. If you're looking for more of an ongoing relationship, there's a great podcast episode that Andrew Darian has on the E-commerce Fuel podcast, and pull it up here real quick. If not, I can send you the link afterwards. But
we'll drop that in the show notes.
Okay, sure. He interviews a lady who has a really fascinating and seemingly effective process for getting applications on Odesk and for filtering out the better ones, or filtering out the worst ones and focusing down on the better ones, and then interviewing and choosing, doing a trial run with a few of them, and then finally choosing one. And it seems it's a very detailed process that she goes through, and I definitely recommend using that sort of process if you're looking for a long-term relationship with a contractor. Another resource that I haven't actually used, but I'm thinking about using here in the near future, is Chris Ducker's service, which is, I think, virtualstafffinder.com. He basically vets different VAs and then will hook you up with a few that you can interview and try out. So I might be trying that out here in the near future to do some development work with me. But if it's more of a one-time job, it's probably not going to be that intensive of an interview process, because it's probably not worth your time to spend all that time interviewing multiple people and doing like week-long trial jobs with people. So, I mean, unless it's a big one-time project. If it's a smaller project, I would say a couple tips. One would be to just look at other job descriptions on Odesk by people who hire a lot of people on a regular basis, and you can see how much a certain person has spent on Odesk. So find someone who's spent $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on Odesk and look at what kind of job descriptions they post, because they've got a lot of experience with it. Another one would be to put a specific instruction in your job description that you can tell if someone who applies to your job has actually read or not. Because a lot of people will do these mass applications. They'll just go through and they'll apply to everything, and they'll just copy and paste in this cover letter. They don't even read the job description, and they're just banking on, hitting a couple of good ones. So to avoid people who do that, and make sure you're getting people who actually are detail oriented and actually read your job description and are more personally qualified, you can include something silly like, please use the word football in the first sentence of your application, and that way you know that they actually read your job description. And then Also be careful of people who, if you're hiring someone overseas who maybe isn't a native English speaker, you probably want to chat with them on Skype to make sure that they are actually fluent or capable in English, even if it's just a text chat, not even necessarily voice, because sometimes they'll have help with writing their cover letters. And so while their cover letter might be in perfect English, they may not actually be able to communicate in clear and correct English. So it can be really helpful to chat in real time with someone to make sure that they can actually communicate well. Those are a couple tips I guess I have based on my experience with it.
Those are some pretty great points. I definitely wouldn't have thought about the curveball or stealing the descriptions off of the more experienced jobs. Those are really helpful. One question that I would have, I know for myself personally, right now I'm bootstrapping essentially as hard as I can. How do you know when you need to outsource a job or when it makes sense? For myself personally, I'm even just with this podcast, with editing, and I'm also working on transcribing every episode for the SEO benefits of having really great content from some pretty high-level entrepreneurs. How do you know when you're ready to and when you can justify it versus just kind of sitting down and gunning through the hours upon hours on your own?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are a couple things to think about. I think one way to think about it is when can you have the expense of that person, that VA or contractor, replaced by the income that you're bringing in or the income that they are bringing in. So, for example, I'm working on a new business that we haven't talked about yet called Pulse Premium, and it's kind of an extension of Ecommerce Pulse, but it's specifically targeted to Shopify store owners. And it's basically they pay us a monthly fee, and I'll take care of any small edits they need or maintenance to their Shopify site, rather than paying an hourly fee. And it typically ends up in their favor where they're paying less than they would if they hired a developer to, for a one-time job or whatever. So what I'm doing with that is it's more of a recurring model. So what I've got right now, I've got about 5 customers signed up for that. So they're bringing in about $400 to $500 a month just from those 5 clients, and that's recurring revenue. So I know I can count on that unless one of them cancels. So my goal is then once I get up to 10 of those customers and I'm bringing in closer to $1,000 a month, at that point, my plan is to hire a full-time developer in the Philippines or somewhere overseas, which you can get for about $1,000 a month. So once I'm bringing in enough income to cover that person, then I'll hire them, and then they will be doing most of the work. So at that point, I'll be pretty much breaking even. So I'll be making about $1,000 a month from that business, and I'll be paying this VA $1,000 a month to take care of those clients. So I guess that's one way to think about it, is once a particular aspect of your business is making enough to pay for a VA, then you can outsource that aspect of it. But it doesn't always work that directly. You don't always can't always tell what part of your business is making money to outsource. So I think another way to think about it is what's your time worth? And so, for example, if I have a client who I can do work for $50 an hour for that client, and I have the choice of either spending 2 hours today working for that client, making $100, or I can spend 2 hours editing my podcast, which basically brings in zero immediate income. And if I could hire a VA for $10 an hour to edit my podcast, then I would pay that VA $20 for 2 hours of podcast editing, and then I could spend that 2 hours making $100, and so it's a net profit. So I guess if you think about how much your time is worth to you, it can help make sense to, I guess, make a decision of whether or not it's worth your time to spend time on small tasks or things that you could potentially outsource.
Okay, that's a pretty good rundown of how that works for you and how you've managed to decide when really was the next step. And a lot of that has to do with your experience with consulting. You have another gig that you can work on the side or as your primary source of income. I think you've really helped enlighten some people with that. And Pulse Premium, it sounds like a pretty good deal. So $100 a month, and they get access to a highly experienced developer able to work on their Shopify sites. How are you going about marketing this? I know you have your podcast at Ecommerce Pulse, which is how I found out about you, where you help owners with e-commerce and dropshipping based sites. What are you doing to reach out and try to grow your membership? or your membership site?
Well, the first way I started marketing it was just reaching out to my existing audience. So I mentioned it on my podcast and then emailed my list and told them about it. And that was just kind of a soft sell. I just kind of casually mentioned it. I don't want to pressure them or anything. But if somebody on my list does have a Shopify site and they need a developer to help them, then they're going to be probably pretty willing to contact me because they've already kind of developed a relationship and have some trust. So another thing that I did to market it was I wrote a blog post that was published on the Shopify blog, which is a very popular, well-trafficked, well-read blog. And I got a number of leads through that, a lot of traffic to my site and a number of leads, and a few new clients actually signed up through that. So I think my longer-term plan is to continue writing guest blog articles, potentially on Shopify, maybe on some other blogs, although, it makes the most sense to do it on Shopify because that's where my target market is. They're all on Shopify. So I don't know. I might try to potentially do some other interviews on podcasts where my potential target market might be listening. Also, another great, very highly converting source of new customers for this business is my existing consulting clients. Once I do a $3,000 website for a client, then they're going to have a very easy time agreeing to pay me $100 a month to manage their website and do maintenance on it because they already know me, they already trust me, they know that I can meet their needs and help them out. So I've already had a couple of existing previous clients sign up to be part of this program as well.
Have you considered trying to use the program in a bit of an affiliate style strategy to grow the business, either working with other people in the e-commerce and online marketing space to have them promote to their audience, or offering discounts to your existing customers? Let's say, I know a lot of gyms have a system where if you get someone else to sign up, you can get a month free. I know a lot of e-commerce store owners, they know other owners through mastermind groups or online forums. Is that something you've considered or working on?
Yeah, that's a great idea, and it's something that I've definitely have thought about and I'm open to. The only reason I haven't done that yet is just a technical limitation. So I'm using a service to manage my monthly subscription payments for these clients, and I've been talking with the owner of that service about how to set up an affiliate program, and currently they don't have one. He's told me they're going to work on it, but I might actually have to switch to a different subscription management system that can allow an affiliate sort of program to be set up, because that's definitely a powerful way to market that I definitely would like to use. The other idea of having existing customers refer people for a free month, that's a great idea. So yeah, I could definitely mention that to them. It probably wouldn't be quite as effective as the getting other bloggers or other leaders in the space to talk about it and be affiliates, just because they're not going to have as many friends or people they know that are other store owners. But it's definitely something to consider for sure. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it would be great if you get your automated payment system working. What are you using currently? I know I've heard of I think Zendesk. That may not be the correct name. I can throw the name in the show notes, but they had a pretty good system for automating payments.
Okay. Well, I'm using Moonclerk, but I'm definitely open to anything else. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you have.
I'll see if I can find the name and send that to you later on after the interview. You've been really, really helpful so far, Leighton, and I think the audience is going to get some really, really great tips from you. My last main question for you would be, what is the main issue or struggle that you see beginning level entrepreneurs struggling with that really waste their time and degrade some of the efforts they're putting in? What would you recommend people to do to kind of alleviate these issues and reach success or progress faster?
Well, we kind of already touched on it, but the biggest thing that I see people do that I think slows them down and on the road to success and having a successful business is taking too long on getting the business started without actually testing the market and getting customers and doing that minimum viable product thing. Because people spend months. And I did that with Picnic Cards. Like I mentioned earlier, I spent months working on the website and the logo and the business plan and all that before I had really validated the idea. So I think, like we've kind of already talked about, it's so important to get something started, see if you can get some paying customers right off the bat, and then worry about the details and getting the website perfect. And then if it doesn't work, you can move on to the next idea, and that's okay.
I completely agree. One of the greatest startups that I've ever heard the story of would be Dropbox. And with Dropbox, they have a very complex system involving cloud-based storage. In order to get the system running and up to speed, they launched a website. They put a video up with 2 laptops, copied the files on both laptops via email, and made a video tutorial of how Dropbox actually worked, even though nothing had been built. They drove traffic to the site with AdWords, got thousands of signups, and brought that to venture capitalists to get funding. And it's really just selling it before you even do an ounce of work. And it's just brilliant and really something that I strive to do and fail pretty miserably at, but it's something we should all try.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to thank you for being on the show today, Light, and you've been a huge help. You've helped people see kind of what goes into living abroad, working in the consulting space while simultaneously working on your own products. And I really think the audience is going to benefit. If people want to connect with you, what's the best place?
The best place is at my website, ecommercepulse.com. And I'm also on Twitter at Leighton Taylor.
Okay, guys, you heard it here. So if you want to get some of the best insight and information into launching your e-commerce store and really taking it to the next level, check out Ecommerce Pulse and see some of the information Leighton has to offer. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks so much for being on the show, Leighton. You've been amazingly helpful.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
My pleasure. And until next time, kick some ass.